This whole idea of like AI is going to replace people, I think it's such a misconception. It's going to multiply our capabilities. I'm really excited about it being able to handle a lot of the mechanical work, the data entry, the basic things that would stop you from really progressing and being efficient with the human elements, which are relationship building, strategic analysis, right? That's what makes people within real estate so great. So if we could have AI help with a lot of the mechanical and basic stuff and be able to focus on problem solving and analysis and just building relationships, then we're really talking.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another killer episode here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast. I am so excited to release this week's episode with Jake Heller, who is one of the founders of the AI for CRE Collective community, which is a community that is entirely geared towards helping real estate investors and real estate professionals better leverage AI to grow their businesses. And I know I don't say this that much during these intros for podcast episodes. I think, I try to really save this hyperbole for when I really do believe in it. But I think that this is one of the most tactical episodes that we've put together on the podcast in terms of just how quickly someone who listens to this episode can go out there and implement something into their business. And that may be partially because I'm on my own journey and, working through the process of trying to better leverage AI in our business, trying to adopt more tools, trying to build more of our systems and our processes around AI automations, AI software, AI tools, etc. And it's a real personal interest of mine right now, and it's a real goal of mine right now. But just generally speaking, I think that for the multifamily investors out there who know they should be better leveraging AI in their business, who don't really know where to start doing so, or for the people who are like, yeah, I know I should be doing it, and I'm kind of using ChatGPT here and there, but like, I don't know, I'm a little skeptical as to what AI can really do for me and my business and what I do. This episode is like quite literally for you. I spend 40 minutes with Jake diving into extremely tactical use cases for AI in multifamily investors' businesses. And, he shares a couple, I think I share a couple of very specific workflows and examples of how you can just start building out some automations and start using some AI functionality and tools within just, the systems and processes that basically every multifamily investor has within their business to just be more efficient, to increase your productivity, basically to just help you grow much faster. So really excited to release this episode because it's incredibly tactical. I think it's quite literally like the core objective of what I try to do here on the Multifamily Wealth Podcast is like record episodes like this that you can listen to on a Monday morning and then spend the first couple of hours of your day like changing how you approach what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I think we achieve that objective with this conversation. So obviously, stick around, listen to the whole thing. I mean, every minute of this episode is valuable. And if you do learn something, and I would be shocked to hear that you didn't learn something in this episode, please leave the podcast a rating and review. If there's ever one that's going to get you to leave a rating, I think it's this one. So please do. Helps the show get noticed by more folks. Helps us achieve our mission of helping multifamily investors grow their businesses. And reach out to Jake. Go check out his community. I'm a member in it. So, I'm speaking from experience here. We've gotten a ton of value out of being being in the community and learning how other real estate professionals are using AI and, staying ahead of this trend and this curve. So go check it out if that's something that you'd like to improve in your business. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Jake Heller. I am here with Jake Heller out of LA. Jake is somebody who I've gotten to know here over the last couple of months through, well, there's a couple different ways. I think it's probably a combination of LinkedIn, maybe an email list. And now you've got the group on School where you're helping real estate folks adopt AI more heavily into their business. And excited to have you on here to talk about how the multifamily investor who listens to this show can get a little bit more out of what's available to them, AI tools wise, process wise, etc. But before we get into it, let's start with your background. How'd you find real estate? Maybe what were you doing just before, and what are you working on today?
Yeah, sure. Well, fired up to be here. Thanks for having me. I come from a home building family. So I'm third generation. We were private home builders in California, Nevada, and Arizona. I've always known the space of building and development. And so after school, got into it pretty quickly. We built some apartment buildings in LA, partnered with some contractor buddies of mine, and we started an entitlements and permit expediting business as well. And I've always kind of worked in parallel to our family office, but never directly for. And fortunately, To have them, I've been able to throw a bunch of shit at the wall to see what sticks. Excuse my language, but it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. I've met some great partners. We've done some cool deals. Now I've come sort of full circle back to the home building space. And there's been a big shift in the home building world among public builders where they want to operate very land light and off their balance sheet. And so they rely on land development partners like ourselves to effectively do all the land development work for them and hold the asset on our balance sheet. And in doing so, they could be relentlessly focused on what it is they do best, and that's just building homes. So we deliver lots. Long story short, we deliver lots to home builders here in California.
Love it. And how did you become so interested in AI and learning all of the ways that it can help the, I guess your business and then maybe how it integrates with real estate as an industry? Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, so when ChatGPT first came around, like everybody, it was just such a game changer. I was so excited about it. It was like playing video games for me. And so I've always just been forward thinking about technology, more so when these large language models like ChatGPT came around. Before that, it was kind of just okay. But in the last couple of years, I've just been really active thinking about prop tech and all the different tools and solutions for real estate. My partner was the same way. And so funny enough, he was actually pitching me to build a software platform, which I had no interest in doing whatsoever. And so we settled on a community like format where by bringing together other individuals who are thinking about technology the same way that we were, we could probably learn more about AI and technology and incorporate some of that into our businesses, me on the development side, him on the brokerage side. And so we kind of accidentally formed this community. On day one, when we first launched it, we had like 100 people sign up. It was actually quite crazy. And we realized, hang on a second, like maybe there's more to the story here. For one thing, it validated the idea that AI and technology was top of mind for a lot of individuals. But when you fast forward to today, which is about 2 months later, we launched August 12th. Initially, we got about 450 commercial real estate individuals as part of our AI for CRE Collective group. It's hosted on School. We talk about AI, we share ideas, we talk about the winners. The reality is that this stuff is moving so fast. Every second, every day, it's a new tool, new feature, new product, new announcement. And so we believe in strength in numbers, and we believe in the idea that we could stay ahead of a lot of this by just bringing together as many people as possible.
Love it. Yeah, I think it's an interesting, I think it's interesting, right? Because as both you and I know, I think as pretty much everybody realizes, like real estate is a very slow moving industry with a lot of older folks, both in years within the business and then oftentimes just age wise. It's like, it's a business with a lot of, people who have been doing it for a long period of time who have kind of done it the same way. And maybe over the years, they've adopted new tech like property management software and project management software and, this tool, that a lot that takes a while, but eventually becomes pretty mainstream in its use. And I think AI, broadly speaking, whether it's very specific tools that may help with one particular thing, like, Excel tools to help build Excel models or help you underwrite, or whether it's graphic design tools, or whether it's just ChatGPT to help analyze leases at a kind of a more bare bones level. There's the people who adopt it quickly and who are really far, who try to put themselves ahead of the curve. And then there's the people that kind of get dragged behind. And I think a lot of folks realize like, okay, AI is fundamentally changing how we approach working within our business. Like, let's try to figure out how to stay ahead of this and to be ahead of the curve, because the folks that are fundamentally going to be the ones that gain efficiencies in their business and grow their business a little bit faster and all of those downstream effects that it has. I think maybe where it helps to start is to just kind of start at a high level in terms of like, what were some of the early use cases that you had for AI, like within your own real estate business, maybe that like really started to actually change how you approached what you were working on. And then maybe we'll kind of pivot from there into like maybe use cases that you've seen for like multifamily investors as it relates to like specific ways that it can affect their workflow and help to expedite maybe, things that they're working on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, look, I think a lot of the basic AI implementations that were done when chat and these other large language models came about was just writing, right? Emails, thinking about things, brain dumping, hey, help me with my thoughts type stuff, which, it's great, right? Revolutionary in a sense. Fast forward to today, it's become a lot more technical. And within real estate specifically, there's just so many things you could do. Incredible things you could do. As it relates to my business, I mean, look, the basic stuff like AI note takers. right? Like I use a tool called Granola. It works in the background. Take notes, summarize it. You can communicate with it as if it's like sort of a digital twin, right? So after a call like this, we might be able to say, hey, write me a follow-up email to Axel just based on the notes. It does all that stuff. That's basic stuff, right? Deck generation, the days of using PowerPoint and spending a ton of time creating decks, whether it's investor decks, offering memorandums, BOVs, whatever it might be. See you later. Tools like Gamma and Henry AI, Canva, like these organizations are at the forefront of building decks. It's incredible. And so some interesting use cases for me as it relates to my business. I'm talking with a lot of investors. I'm talking with brokers. We have calls with investors all the time, larger institutional type groups. And so we'll have our AI note taker take all the notes as part of the call. We'll take those notes, we'll throw it into like Gamma, and we'll have it create like a presentation deck. And so it's not that it moves the needle so much, but it kind of differentiates us in a very competitive space. And so I think people appreciate that, right? Ordinarily, something like that would take hours on end. It could take 10 hours to build a deck and send it off. I've had a scenario where we didn't have a deck and we were pitching an investor and they said, send me a deck. And we said, okay, we'll get working on it. I had that deck created almost before we finished the conversation, which you couldn't do previously. So things like this are incredible. I think when you look at where we are today, there's a lot of basic implementation, and this whole idea of like AI is going to replace people. I think it's such a misconception. It's going to multiply our capabilities. I'm really excited about it being able to handle a lot of the mechanical work, the data entry, the basic things that would stop you from really progressing and being efficient with the human elements, which are relationship building, strategic analysis, right? That's what makes people within real estate so great. So if we could have AI help with a lot of the mechanical and basic stuff and be able to focus on problem solving and analysis and just building relationships, then we're really talking. So look, big picture, we are in the very early innings of all of this stuff. There's new things that are happening each day. We're using AI for market research, for creating building renderings, for construction takeoffs, for underwriting with tools like Index and Shortcut, being able to underwrite more deals. And it's just so great. But like from where we are now to where we want to be, and it's funny, I was just doing a podcast episode a little bit earlier, and we were talking about this whole Jarvis type situation. For those that don't know, if you've ever seen Iron Man, Tony Stark, he's got this Jarvis, right? Imagine you're a real estate investor and you're just being able to communicate with this Jarvis-like type feature where, hey, maybe you had a property inspection, you're about to buy this deal during due diligence, and you're walking around the property like, oh, hey, I need to replace the roof, or here's a picture of this. And you're uploading all this information, and it automatically is just underwriting this deal for you like in real time, or like, hey, check my calendar, send an email to X, Y, and Z. Or you have AI agents that are living within your inbox. Any deal that comes to your email, you have this AI agent automatically scan, look at it, take the information, underwrite it, come back to you. Hey, based on your deal criteria, hey, to get an 18% levered IRR, you're going to need to buy this deal at 1.5 million. It's at 2.5 million. Do you want me to generate an LOI? Yes. You wake up in the morning, tell it to do so. It generates the LOI, and then it's sending it off to brokers. Getting way ahead of myself. But like from where we are now to where we're going to be, it's happening fast. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We just started using relay.app, which I know you're familiar with, which is like for the listener, it's a very simple AI kind of workflow builder, right? Where it's like you can automate repetitive tasks within your business, just a whole bunch of functionalities. I'm going to botch the overview of how I describe it. But like one of the things that we're using it for is if we receive an email and we have like a list of all of the different emails of like brokers that work in the markets that we buy assets in. And when they email us, we have a very simple automation that analyzes the context of the email. And if it is information about a deal, it can actually pull the PDF off of that email or analyze the contents of the email, do some quick high-level underwriting, automatically run, some type of research prompt as it relates to like pull some rent comps in the zip code, pull some sales comps in the zip code, spit out this digestible form, give us some sample draft an email with sample feedback based on our acquisition criteria, which is a resource we give it. And it's like, no, it's not replacing us as it relates to like underwriting the deal. But if we get an email from a broker and it's about a particular deal and not about, we filter out all the emails that are unrelated to sharing a new deal with us. It gives us it gets us kind of on the 50-yard line, right? If we're starting in our own end zone, if I'm going to use, a football analogy here, but it helps us kind of expedite that process. And I think what you're describing is probably where it's going, right? Where it's like you have something that lives in your inbox in perpetuity, understands exactly how you think, right? Communicate your tone of voice, how you draft emails, how you think about problem solving, because it's probably reading all of the emails that you've shared, over the last year and is trained on all of that stuff and starts acting on your behalf. Like we're probably not that far away from that being a reality. I mean, it's like we're getting pretty close to that already.
No, totally. It's insane how quickly this stuff is moving. I think we're not seeing top-down implementation from a lot of the bigger institutional groups at the moment, or some of the bigger real estate shops. And I have a theory for that, and I'm sure there's a ton of theories for that. But it's interesting because I was presenting to one of these larger institutional type groups, international company, massive. And every question I got was about privacy and their data, right? And like, hey, how do we know that this is not going to get open sourced and just go out on the internet for anybody to see? And look, I can't speak so intelligently to that, but I think we have a data problem at the moment, which needs to be solved. And for these institutions and for commercial real estate as a whole to adopt this type of technology in a meaningful way, it starts with the data. And so there's a lot of groups trying to solve that. But these institutions, these groups, anyone who's a commercial real estate investor, you, me, whoever it might be, what we don't realize is that we're sitting on a gold mine of data, each of us, right? From like all the deals we've done, the conversations we have. Imagine just your email, right? How many conversations you've had with different people, LOIs that have been sent on that deal, counter LOIs that have come back, deal analysis. And so imagine the potential or the possibilities when we could figure out how to use that data, consolidate it, synthesize it for future deals or for anything that we do within commercial real estate. And so I'm a big proponent. I firmly believe that, there's groups trying to solve for this data at the moment. I think 2026 is going to be a big year for implementation for a lot of these groups. And I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, data's huge, as you just described. I think that was kind of my biggest hurdle initially in getting the most out of the tools that were available to us, which was our data was either incomplete or just scattered in where it's located, right? And I think, an example of this specifically is like we send a lot of emails to our email list just from an email marketing standpoint, educate our LPs. We send some newsletters talking about our business. I'll just send a newsletter that is my 2 cents on current events when something happens, and just as a way of staying in touch with our LPs and all the folks that are, interacting with our business, our vendors, our partners, brokers, etc. And previously, when we sent that email newsletter, it was drafted in our email marketing platform, Active Campaign. It was sent out, and that was it. There was no like living by, area where all of those historical emails were listed or stored. So we took all of those and we threw them in a Google Drive folder, historical broadcast emails we send to our email list, which now has like 50 emails that are in my tone of voice with my writing, kind of through how through the lens of how I think about stuff. And now we can take a tool like a Notebook LM or even a Chat GPT or whatever and prompt it and say, analyze all the last 50 emails I send, draft, my thoughts as it relates to these specific current events. Like here's 4 articles of what's going on in the real estate industry, make them between this word count, write in kind of how I would think about this topic. And I'm like 75-80% of the way there with like an email, right? And that was impossible before because the data wasn't stored in one area and it wasn't, maybe even that good. But I think specific to like, real estate, it's interesting because we have so much financial data with our own properties. We have there's so much financial data as we underwrite deals and as we upload underwriting models on all these deals we've looked at, all of the different OMs we get for the comps that, or OMs we get on deals that we could use as future comps or rent comps, sales comps. I think like a great way to start thinking about this if you're an investor is like get all of this stuff into one place, try to think about data collection in a more serious way because that helps you, use AI tools a little bit more effectively, I think, broadly speaking.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And the scenario you described with Notebook LM and sort of creating this knowledge base, I think I really resonate with. And I would challenge anyone who's listening to this that to get more familiar with that and tools like ChatGPT and Claude, where majority of people use and certainly know at this point, they have pretty advanced capabilities to help with a lot of that stuff. You could make digital twins of yourself, right? So something that I did recently, and I by the way, I use Claude at the moment. I don't use ChatGPT anymore. I think Claude's far superior.
Can I ask real quick, like specific, like if you could expand on that a little bit, like what specifically is you're getting in Claude, you're not getting in ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of things. I think ChatGPT after they released GPT-5 just went downhill hard.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's a great model. I don't like the way it presents information. I just don't love it or really connect with it the same way that I do with Claude. Claude's my AI girlfriend. And once upon a time, I used to have all five large language models up on my screen. There's more than five, but the five kind of core ones, which is ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, and Perplexity. I
Yep.
subscribe still to all five, fortunately and unfortunately. But at the moment, now I only use Claude. And there's reasons for that, but since they released Sonnet 4.5, its capabilities are just so brilliant. I think its context capacity is as good as it gets. So in other words, if you wanted to attach maybe 100-page lease in Claude and you did the same thing within ChatGPT, I think your result will be better within Claude. But what I am most excited about with Claude is its project feature and skills feature. Skills is the most recent update within Claude, and it's the closest thing I've seen to an AI agent that lives
Yep.
within these large language models. So for me, being in the home building industry, I am obsessed with Stuart Miller, who's the chairman and CEO of Lennar, right? One of the biggest home builders in the country. The guy is arguably the most influential person in home building. And so what I've done, and hopefully I'm okay to say this, but I've created a digital twin of Stuart Miller, right? Where like I had Claude do so much research on the guy, every interview, every podcast, every thing that he's done. Obviously, that's publicly available. And I've created a skill for Stuart Miller. And so any problem or issue that I run into, I could apply his decision making framework to it. And it's so brilliant. And I mean, that's just one example. Another one I've done, which this was a demo I did for the AI for CRE community, but lease abstracts, right? Which that's a pretty common thing that people do. You could just take a lease, go into one of these LLMs like Chat or Claude and prompt it and get a lease abstract, right? But that's not a scalable thing because on the next one, you're going to do the same thing. And if it's not the same prompt, you'll get a different output. Even if it is the same prompt, you'll still probably get a different output, right? And so with skills, you could create like a reference file where it understands your branding, your format, etc. And so you build this AI agent where anytime you have a lease, you can throw it into this skill and it'll produce the same format, style, lease abstract that you'd like. You could do it with OMs. You could do it with anything. I mean, I like Alex Ramosi. That, for those of you that don't know, he's a big sort of internet guy, but I think he's pretty genius about how he thinks about sales and growth and marketing, et cetera. And so you could apply like a digital twin of Alex Ramosi that, helps you kind of think about like growth and sales and scale, et cetera. So for me, I'm just most bullish on Claude, but each of these kind of serve a different purpose. I think Grok's really good because it's integrated with Twitter, right? Grok is Twitter and vice versa. Twitter is a wealth of information, both good and bad. Don't have an opinion on that, but there is a lot of information within Twitter. So what I've done with Grok is I've created like a scheduled task where each morning I have it rip through Twitter for a specific purpose. Like in my case, maybe Los Angeles real estate, the market as a whole is really interesting information. Any sort of regulatory updates, new businesses, anything within LA. So I've had Grok scan Twitter, look for all that, maybe new sales, anything about LA real estate. On a daily cadence, it'll send it to me. And each morning I have that ammunition, right? Oh, LA is talking about an eviction moratorium, or this new business is looking for 100,000 square feet of office space, whatever it might be. And so Grok's really good for that. And then just for that particular use case, I think you could take that information, assuming you're an investor, you could take that information, you can go to Gamma, you can create a deck. That's something you could send off to your LPs. So that's a really good, interesting workflow. I think that a lot of people could do. It's very easy. It's cheap, lightning fast. Perplexity is good at research. So I like Perplexity for research. And then Gemini image generation and video generation is off the charts. Unbelievable. Yesterday, I was doing a video where I went onto Google Maps and took a screenshot of an apartment building, threw it into Gemini. I said, I want to fully update, renovate the exterior facade, all the siding, landscaping in front, etc. And it's going to produce the most realistic renderings, almost to the T on the exact dimensions and structure of that particular building. And so Gemini is just ridiculously good for that. But still, Claude is my AI girlfriend.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and then you have all of these side pieces with all the other platforms.
Exactly.
No, I mean your use case of using Grok to go out there and basically source all of the interesting commentary, news, just thoughts from thought leaders in the space and having them delivered to you on kind of a consistent cadence, I think is really interesting. That almost like replaces in a way a lot of what people are actually trying to personally get out of Twitter, or I should say X, right? Where it's like, I'm on X because I want to hear what so-and-so has to say and I want to get the news updates and I want to see, like what's going on kind of behind the scenes. And that's a manual process in a lot of people's day-to-day routine. Whereas if you can automate that in a lot of ways and just tear out all the stuff all the negative stuff of X, which is the echo chamber and the highly charged commentary and the stuff that gets you stressed every day when you look at it, that's actually a pretty good use case for it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I want to create a bit of a scenario here because I think what I'm going to try to do is put myself in the shoes of many of the listeners here who I'll probably describe as AI aware, and maybe they're using one LLM, maybe they're using ChatGPT at a kind of a bare bones level, and they want to do more, but they're not sure where to start. So to provide some context here, maybe we got a multifamily real estate investor who's listening. They're pretty active. They're doing 5, 10 deals a year. They're asset managing all of these deals. They're underwriting deals from new brokers and from sellers on a regular basis. They're working through the lending process with lenders, et cetera. Like we're talking about a pretty active investor here. And maybe right now they're using ChatGPT to for the bare bones stuff. They're doing a lease abstract, right? To use your example. They know to upload a whole bunch of leases and a rent roll and say, hey, tell me if none of this stuff lines up or if there's any language in the leases that's concerning. Maybe they're using it for some other simple stuff like that. But it's one-off tasks. It's not core to their business, and they're using no other platforms other than that, which I think is like a lot of our industry right now, or people that kind of fit that description. Where would you recommend maybe they start to think about adopting either like a new tool or using another LLM in like a more intensive way? I mean, you just shared some use cases, which is great, but anything above and beyond what you just described as it relates to like where that type of person can start more heavily adopting AI into what they're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, look, it starts with knowing just what tools are out there, right? How to direct these tools, how to use what tool for what purpose at the moment, because it is a bit fragmented, right? Like people are looking for a holistic, top-down implementation of this stuff that's just going to change their business entirely, right? And like it can definitely change their business, but sort of in a more granular and fragmented way. And so it starts with just trying these tools, testing these tools, learning what's out there. Join the community. We talk about all this stuff, but like there's so many different things you could do, right? Gamma for deck creation, whether it's investor decks or OMs or whatever it might be. Market research reports, right? Index and shortcut AI for your Excel work. Build pro formas instantly by communicating the same way you would with ChatGPT. It lives within your Excel model. And tools like that are so interesting because they integrate so seamlessly with what you're already doing. As real estate professionals, we're not leaving Excel ever. Or
Yeah.
I'm not going to say ever, but at some point maybe we will.
We
but
spend a
not
lot of time in there. Yeah.
so much time. And so what those tools do so brilliantly is they meet you in your workplace, right? Which is Excel, and they multiply your capabilities. So think being able to underwrite 10 times the amount of deals at that you could do at the moment. And I just spoke with the CEO of Index, and we were talking big picture about where it's going. But like within the next 12 to 18 months, this is what they said. You'll be able to have your underwriting model, and with 10 different OMs, right? You could add into Excel, and it's going to underwrite 10 of those deals using your exact Excel model all at the same time. We're close to something like that. But at the moment, it's still very good for things, right? If you want to add an ADU to your property, but you don't have the model that's flexible enough to analyze that exact scenario, build it using Index. It does it in seconds. right? If you're a business and you're not sure if you want to lease the next space or buy your next space, build it. So these tools allow you to analyze data in ways that you couldn't do previously, which makes them so beautiful. Notebook LM, right? I use it for a lot of training. Add as much information as you possibly can to Notebook LM as part of like these source files. Next time you bring on a junior analyst for multifamily deals, go into Claude or go into Chat or one of these LLMs and just say, I want you to find as much information in source files and PDFs, whatever it might be, on the topic of multifamily investing. Send it to me. You'll take that information, you'll put it into Notebook LM, and then Notebook LM is going to allow you to create video guides, podcast audio overviews, study guides, quizzes, flashcards, etc. And this really robust type training curriculum, which you could then send to your new junior analysts. Notebook LM is great for that. Capitalize.io, the co-founder of Crexy, built Capitalize, which is think of the CoStar for mortgage data. So any upcoming maturities of loans, right? Any lender, it's the intersection point of all this stuff. If you want to see loans coming due for a particular asset type in whatever, New York City, Capitalize.io, right? Manus, not that it's a specific real estate tool, but full construction takeoffs, upload a plan set, watch it go to work, right? Renderings, videos. Another example, I've done this with Manus. You talk about a newsletter, right? Like same situation as Grok. Have Manus do a scheduled task, go on the internet and find everything as it relates to LA multifamily. Then have it write the newsletter for you. Then have it take that newsletter and create a deck for you. And then every week send that to your client or LP or whoever it is that you send your newsletter to. It's brilliant. It's genius. So there's no shortage of tools that are out there. I mean, we have a tool database, I think, of 380 different tools. It's insane. Hello Data for market comps. Check it out. It's an insane tool. I think there's no tool that gets as granular as Hello Data for rental housing. It's brilliant. So
love it.
You got to just start. You got to get into the weeds. You got to test these tools. You got to learn. I know life gets busy. This stuff requires a time investment at the moment. But I think the gap between those that are using this and those that aren't is only getting wider. I just went to war on LinkedIn with this guy who is not adopting this stuff. He's so proud of his work product. And I said, that's great. I understand it. Wonderful. Okay. But like you're resisting something arguably more revolutionary than the internet. Imagine when the internet came out, you're just like, nah, I'm not going to use it. Right? Like, are you still around today doing what you were doing at that point? No way. This is the biggest thing. I don't think people understand just how large AI is. We haven't even scratched the surface of it. So get in there, get in the weeds, start testing these tools, asking questions, be open-minded. Don't lose your originality or creativity, right? Like what makes you great. But these tools could make you better. Why fight them?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's pretty comparative to call it like mid 2010s. I'll just use that as like a vague time frame. We got into real estate in 2016, but like right around that time was when the adoption of global talent for businesses, not just real estate, just businesses within the US started to incrementally kind of take off. The virtual assistants, the remote team members working with people who are in Argentina and the Philippines or whatever to help you with your underwriting, to help you, as an executive assistant, to help you with graphic design, editing your podcast, whatever. And a lot of that, workload heading offshore. 2020 and COVID sent that to the moon where everyone's working remote anyways. And now because everybody was working remote anyways and not in an office and got used to working remotely, well, then everybody became much more familiar with working with people virtually. And the people that were kind of ahead of that trend really started to benefit from it. And even now, it's really interesting in that, like, we own a property management company. We manage 700-800 units. Like, not, I think it's 75% of our team right now. We have 30 team members, about 8 are within the US, 22 are virtual. And like that, we're just ahead of the curve and we're competing with people who are so resistant to working with global talent, which is like, to us, it's like, well, you're so lost. Like you're so far behind what we're doing. It's pretty wild. The fact that you're still resisting this type of structural change and how business is being done within the US right now. And AI is kind of similar, right? It takes a lot of work to work with global talent. It takes a lot of work to hire people and delegate and to train and to manage. And everybody's familiar with kind of the management and hiring 101 where your productivity dips for a little bit and then it shoots back up over the baseline once you get them trained up and integrated into your business. And I think, as you just described, like AI is very similar in that you have to take some time to tinker with and to play with these tools and to understand, kind of the thematic approach to adopting this in your business. Like, I'm going to start using these tools. I know that this is where things are going longer term. I want to become familiar with how to prompt large language models correctly and integrate tools and to identify which tools may be helpful in kind of one-off use cases. And yeah, the tool you use today may not be the tool you use in 12 months, but understanding like the language of how all of this stuff starts to operate, even if you're not a software engineer, like I'm over there on relay.app, like making little workflow automations, and I'm like, I couldn't be farther from a guy who's technically proficient. But like just by doing it a few times, I'm like, all right, I kind of get how all this stuff is starting to talk to each other and what's capable. And just doing that, it's like a muscle like anything, right? You get some reps and you start using some of the stuff, and then you start to see other ways of which it can integrate into your business, and things start to expand pretty quickly in terms of how you start to use them. So just like echoing that sentiment, it's like for me, like the analogy is it's like hiring in a way, right? It takes some time to find the person that you're going to train and replace these various things that you work on, but over time, there's upside benefits in doing so within your business. Now, I know we're coming up on our time, but I want to ask you one question before we get you out of here. Personally speaking, so maybe unrelated to real estate. I remember you mentioned Whisper Flow as a tool you're using, and I think I just saw you post about that on LinkedIn. Like, I love Whisper Flow as like a personal productivity AI tool. And I'm maybe answering the question I'm about to ask you for you, but like personally, are there tools that you're using just either productivity wise in your personal life that are sticking out as something that's kind of really changing how you approach just managing your email or doing stuff personally outside of real estate? Maybe Whisperflow is one of them or the answer, but curious as to which tools you're using there.
Yeah, Whisperflow is great. I absolutely love Whisperflow. And I have it on both my computer and on my phone, but going for a walk, being able to use Whisperflow and just brain dump. I mean, you could use voice dictation within the iPhone, but it stinks. Like it doesn't
So
do
bad.
it. Yeah, it doesn't type things correctly. Grammar is terrible. So there's Whisperflow. Granola, which is AI note taker, now it has a capability for phone calls. And so being able to take AI notes on just any phone conversation, I think it's revolutionary for me. And then these Excel agents are brilliant. And they're not, I don't just use them specifically for real estate. For example, my fiance came home the other day and she works within dental implant manufacturing. And she needed to build an analysis to it's almost a foreign language. So somebody with like she's a CPA, depreciation with like machine rates. I don't even know how to say it. And I was literally just laying in bed and I like whipped it up and it was like unbelievable. Her jaw dropped. And so I think just on the personal front, like again, being able to analyze data in ways you couldn't do previously, like whether it's for your house, right? Should I refinance this or should I like what's my return on investment for maybe renovating X, Y, and Z within the backyard? I don't know. You could use these tools like Index and Shortcut to help you analyze things, whether it's for business, personal, it doesn't matter. So my personal stack, I mean, look, Whisperflow, it's just genius. I love it. Claude, I use for everything. It's a big part of my life. Granola, and then I'd say some of the Excel stuff. That's just more on the personal side. But wow, my tech stack is so large as it relates to business.
Yeah.
It's getting larger by the day. So, but it's been fun.
Yeah, well, you got to try them all to figure out which ones are, more of a core component of what you're going to use on a regular basis, right? I think that's kind of the mentality that's important to have right now. But yeah, I'll second, all of the nice things about Whisperflow. Like nothing, nothing is better than having a lengthy email in your inbox that I know that I'm going to have to send a lengthy email as a reply and just talking instead of sitting there and typing. I think that's the one that I probably use like most frequently. That's like kind of structurally changed what I do on a day-to-day basis the most. So, if you take anything away from this as like a listener outside of anything related to real estate, like personal productivity wise, you got to get Whisper Flow.
Yeah.
But listen, Jake, this has been great, man. Where can folks learn more about you? Where can they connect with you? Feel free to plug the school group, CRE Collective there, AI for CRE Collective. But what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, Jake Heller for LinkedIn. I think Jake Heller one for LinkedIn, Jake LA developer for Twitter. We have the school community AI for CRE Collective, growing fast, 450 plus people net, 10, 15, 20 new people per week. So soon we'll be in the thousands. Great place to just talk about this stuff, stay in front of it, make all this a little bit less overwhelming. And I think I'd speak on behalf of everyone who's a part of it that it's just we're learning so much. And with how quickly things change, I think it's by the second at this point, just whether it's a new tool announcement product coming together and just as a group being strategic and tactical with all the right tools and stuff that's coming out. It's been awesome. So join the collective. You'll learn about this stuff. We post daily, new use cases, automations, workflows. Founders come to us with all the new tools that they're building, giving us early access, which is great. So huge advantage by being part of it.
Love it. Awesome, man. Appreciate the time. I'll link all that stuff in the show notes there. I highly encourage everybody to go check out, connect with you on LinkedIn at a bare minimum, right? If you just want to start to develop a little bit more of a sense of what's going on in the real estate industry as it relates to some of the AI tools and how they're changing how we work on things. Step one is like exposure. Just becoming more familiar with what other people are doing, I think is at a bare minimum helpful for folks. And that's how I started to get a little bit more aware of what was going on, because it's hard to actively seek out the information yourself if you're not motivated to try to figure this stuff out. So, step one, I think even just that is a great next step for the listeners out there. And then obviously check out the group as well. I've gotten a lot of value out of it. So highly recommend everybody who's listening at least goes in and gives it a peek. But thanks again for the time, man. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Had a blast.